Olivia hesitated before hitting the accept button on the invitation to her mother's family dinner. It was always the same. Her mother's dinners were more about appearances than actual family bonding. Every year she'd end up paying for the entire meal, quietly enduring the passive-aggressive comments, the uncomfortable silences. But this time, there was something different. She couldn't explain it, but something about the invitation gnawed at her. Her family always found ways to make her feel like an afterthought, but she never said anything. She was too tired for that. She just wanted it to be over. The pressure from past gatherings hit her. The memory of the bill she had footed last year, over $800 for a meal that left her feeling invisible. But she could handle it. She always did. At least she wasn't alone. Her hand hovered over the button as the phone buzzed again. It was her mom, of course, reminding her to bring a little something to the dinner, just in case. Olivia's stomach sank. The unspoken rule was clear. No matter what, she was expected to take care of things, and as much as it annoyed her, she didn't want to disappoint her mom. Taking a breath, she accepted the invitation, sighing as she slid the phone back into her bag. Maybe this time, things would be different, but deep down, she knew they wouldn't be. The night of the dinner came faster than she expected. As she pulled up to her parents' house, Olivia already felt the familiar tightness in her chest. She entered the house and was immediately greeted by her mother, who had that same smile, the one that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Olivia, darling," her mother said with forced enthusiasm, "I'm so glad you could make it." Olivia nodded, offering a tight smile, but before she could say anything else, her mother gestured to the back of the room, her eyes lingering on Olivia for just a moment too long. "Why don't you sit at the back, dear?" she said, her tone casual, almost dismissive. The main group is already seated. Olivia's heart sank. It wasn't a surprise. She had been relegated to the other group many times before, the one that didn't get the conversation or attention. She could already feel the old bitterness rising, but she pushed it down. Tonight she was going to be different. She didn't make a scene. She didn't argue. Instead, Olivia made her way to the back table. As she sat down, she ordered a drink from the server who passed by. Trying to steady her nerves, she had a plan. A small one, but a powerful one. The kind of move that no one would see coming. It wasn't about being loud or making a fuss. No, this time, she was going to make sure she had the last word. Olivia pulled her phone out under the table, typing in a quick note to the restaurant staff. It was simple. The entire bill would be charged to her family. She smiled to herself, knowing they'd never see it coming, as she watched her family eat, laugh, and indulge in the expensive meal she was all too familiar with footing the bill for. Olivia remained calm. She could feel the tension in the air, but she didn't flinch. It wasn't her problem anymore. As the dinner continued, Olivia's sense of quiet rebellion began to grow. She had taken control, and the irony wasn't lost on her. Her mother had once again decided she didn't belong, but Olivia wasn't going to let that silence go unnoticed. The dinner had ended in the usual whirlwind of laughter and empty compliments. But the moment Olivia stepped out of the restaurant, she couldn't shake the feeling of satisfaction. She had arranged it perfectly. The entire meal, every drink and appetizer, charged to her family's tab. She had even slipped in an extra surprise. The tip, a generous one, was added as well. As she made her way to the parking lot, a strange calmness washed over her. She had done it. Finally, she had taken control. Moments later, her phone buzzed, shattering her peace. It was her father. "Olivia, where are you?" he demanded, his voice already strained. Olivia could hear the tension in his voice, the mix of confusion and irritation. She knew what was coming. She took a deep breath, walked over to her car, and opened the door. "I'm just leaving the restaurant, Dad. What's up?" "You need to get back here," her father said, his voice rising. "Why the hell is the bill over $1,700? Olivia suppressed a grin. "I'm not sure, Dad. You should ask the waiter." Her father let out a long, heavy sigh. "Don't play games, Olivia. You know exactly what I'm talking about. You know how we don't have money to throw around like that." She could almost hear the grinding of his teeth, the desperation in his voice. She remained calm. "I'm sure you'll figure it out. I paid for my drink, though. It's all good." The silence on the other end of the line was deafening for a moment. Then her father snapped, his voice a mixture of outrage and disbelief. "You did this on purpose, didn't you? You're embarrassing us. Your mother's upset, and now everyone's going to know about this. Olivia knew the storm was coming, but she wasn't ready to give him the satisfaction of her reaction. She'd been the one to absorb all of their manipulation for so long. For the first time, she wasn't going to fold under pressure. "Dad," she said softly, "you've always known how to handle things like this. Figure it out." With that, she ended the call, her fingers hovering over the screen for a second longer than usual. As Olivia got into her car, she could already hear the chaos begin to unfold inside the restaurant. She didn't need to look back to know they were probably scrambling. The bill, the look of horror on her mother's face when she realized Olivia had played them, was enough to paint the scene in her mind. And as she drove off into the night, Olivia felt a strange mixture of awkwardness and liberation. For the first time in her life, she had done something for herself. Something that wasn't about appeasing her family or saving face. It wasn't about petty revenge. It was simply about taking a stand, reclaiming control of her own life. As she neared her apartment, her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a message from her brother. "Did you seriously just make us pay for everything?" Olivia smiled and, without replying, set the phone down. There was nothing more to say. This was only the beginning. The sharp knock on Olivia's door echoed in the quiet of her apartment, startling her from the trance-like state she had been in since the dinner. She hadn't expected them to show up so soon, but there they were, standing in front of her, looking as though they had already rehearsed their complaints, were her parents, both holding the receipt for last night's dinner in their hands. Olivia's father was the first to speak, his voice strained, his face red from anger. "Olivia, what the hell is this?" he demanded, thrusting the receipt towards her. "This bill is over $7,200. Why the hell would you do this to your own family?" Her mother stood behind him, arms crossed, her face a mask of feigned concern. "We don't understand," she said, her voice trembling with the edges of faux hurt. "You've always helped us. Why couldn't you just contribute like you always have?" Olivia remained calm. She had known this was coming, yet it still didn't quite prepare her for the shock of hearing it aloud. They stood there in her doorway, looking like they had every right to be angry with her, every right to demand explanations. "I treated you the way you've always treated me," Olivia said quietly, her voice low but firm. "You've always expected me to pick up the pieces. You've always assumed that I'd just bail you out when things went wrong. Well, I'm done." Her father's face twisted in disbelief. "This is ridiculous. You're embarrassing us, Olivia. You don't do this to family." Her mother nodded, but there was no real anger in her voice, only the practiced tone of someone who had always gotten her way. "You don't understand, sweetheart," she said, looking at Olivia like she was a disappointment. "You've always been the one to help. Why couldn't you just do it this time? It was just a dinner." Olivia felt her heart quicken, but she held firm. She wasn't going to apologize. She wasn't going to back down. "No," she said simply. "I've been doing this for years, paying for dinners, for gifts, for your bills. All the while being treated like I don't matter. This dinner was the last straw. I'm not doing this anymore." Her parents stood there for a moment, stunned. Then her father muttered something under his breath and stormed off. Her mother turned on her heel, huffing with frustration. "You've made your point, Olivia," her mother said, her voice tight. "But you're not going to get away with this. You'll regret it." Just as her mother was about to leave, Olivia heard a loud crash from outside her apartment. It sounded like something heavy hitting the pavement. She froze, confused. Before walking quickly toward the window, through the blinds, she saw her father standing by her car, a rock in his hand, his face contorted in fury. He raised the rock high and brought it down with all his strength onto her car window. The glass shattered, sending shards raining down onto the asphalt. Olivia felt a pang of shock, but she didn't feel the rush of anger she expected. Instead, she felt a strange sense of finality. She'd watched him do it, and she knew there was no going back. With deliberate slowness, Olivia took out her phone and opened the security footage app. She saved the clip of her father destroying her car window, her fingers steady as she tapped save. When her parents stormed out, she remained unfazed. After all, she had done what she'd set out to do, and now it was time to take control. She filed a police report a few minutes later, her calm determination a sharp contrast to the chaos unfolding around her. This was the first concrete step she had ever taken to hold her parents accountable. And for the first time, Olivia felt a sense of empowerment. as though she had finally broken free from their manipulative grip. Olivia sat at her kitchen table, sipping her coffee, but her mind wasn't on the warm brew in front of her. She had been thinking about the bills, the endless transfers, the quiet drain that had been her life for months. No, for years. For as long as she could remember, her family's financial struggles had been her responsibility. But recently, something inside her had snapped. She opened her bank app on her phone and stared at the numbers. Every month, she had been contributing $2,000 to the family account, the same amount without fail. No matter how hard things were for her, the money wasn't just for her parents anymore. It was also for her brother, who, despite being fully capable of working, seemed to always find new ways to squander money on gadgets and vacations. Olivia had always paid her share without question, but lately something felt off. She scrolled through the transactions, her fingers tapping lightly on the screen. Her brother's lavish lifestyle was evident in every purchase: luxury watches, designer clothes, weekend getaways. Meanwhile, her parents, the ones who had raised her, kept claiming they were struggling. The disparity between the narrative they fed her and the reality of their spending was too much to ignore. Her stomach tightened as she looked at the numbers, the truth sinking in deeper with every click. They had been using her. She locked her phone and exhaled deeply, the weight of the moment sinking in. This was it. She was done. Without hesitation, she opened the account page, clicked on the transfer options, and locked the account. No more transfers. No more checks written under the guise of helping. She zeroed out the account, a simple, clean break. The action itself felt liberating, but also terrifying. There was no going back now. For the next few days, Olivia let the silence settle. Her phone buzzed constantly with calls, but she ignored them. Each one was from her family, desperate to understand why the money had stopped flowing, why she was no longer their safety net. The first few days were peaceful, but she could feel the storm brewing. Her family's reaction would come. It always did. They would try to guilt her, they would try to manipulate her, but Olivia wasn't interested in hearing it anymore. This time, she wasn't playing the role of the obedient daughter, the generous sibling. She was done. She sat by the window, watching the rain streak down the glass, and allowed herself a moment of relief. For the first time in a long while, she didn't feel the weight of other people's expectations dragging her down. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a message from her mother. "Olivia, we need to talk. Your father is in a panic. Please don't make this harder than it has to be." Olivia read the message and smiled faintly. Harder, she thought. I'm not making this hard. I'm just not paying for everything anymore. Her phone continued to buzz, but she didn't respond. Instead, she moved on with her day, feeling lighter with every call and text that went unanswered. This was her stand. She wasn't just fighting back against her family's demands. She was reclaiming her life. The invitation arrived with the usual sense of family pressure, but this time, Olivia was prepared. Her parents had sent a message trying to smooth things over after the dinner incident. They apologized for their behavior, acting like nothing had happened the night before. They even tried to make it sound like everything was fine, asking her to join them for dinner, claiming it was just a chance to reconnect. Olivia's lips twitched into a smile when she read the message. She had already made her decision. It was going to be a quiet act of defiance, the final piece of her strategy to reclaim control. She arrived at the restaurant early, sitting in a corner booth and waiting. When her parents walked in, they greeted her like nothing was wrong, their faces plastered with smiles that barely concealed the awkwardness between them. They were trying to pretend like they hadn't just been caught off guard by her little stunt the night before. They settled into the booth, making small talk, as if the tension of the previous night had just dissolved. Olivia played along, her face a mask of calm. She was enjoying this, enjoying their discomfort, even as they tried to play the part of the loving family. "Good to see you, Olivia," her father said with a forced smile. "We've been talking, and we think it's time we move past all that drama. Let's just focus on the future, yeah?" Her mother chimed in, looking at Olivia with an air of false warmth. "Exactly. We've all made mistakes, but we're a family. It's time we put all of this behind us." Olivia nodded, her smile tight. "Of course, Mom. I'm glad we're having this chance to reconnect," she said, leaning in slightly, playing the part. She felt like an actor in their little drama. The evening continued, and as the conversation lulled, Olivia excused herself, saying she needed to take a phone call. Her parents barely noticed as she slipped away from the table, walking across the restaurant to the bathroom. But Olivia didn't go to the bathroom. Instead, she stood in the quiet corner, her hand brushing over her phone. She opened the restaurant's payment app and made sure her little plan was in motion. The bill, a hefty one this time, would be left for them to handle, with a few extra charges for the incidentals she had added on earlier. She smiled to herself. When she returned to the table, she sat down calmly, her eyes meeting her parents' faces. There was a flicker of confusion in their expressions, but it was fleeting. "Everything okay?" her mother asked, her voice too sweet. Olivia nodded. "Yeah, everything's fine. Just needed a moment." She looked at her watch and stood up again. "Actually, I have to head out. Work and all that." Her parents looked disappointed, but Olivia could see the relief in their eyes. They didn't want her there any longer than she had to be. She gave them a quick smile, stood, and made her way to the front. As she paid for only her own drink and left, she could hear the sound of their voices growing louder behind her. Her father's was the clearest. "What the hell is this?" he was shouting, his voice rising in indignation. "Where's the bill?" Olivia stepped outside, the cool air brushing against her skin as she slipped into her car. The laughter and chaos from inside the restaurant faded as she drove away, a sense of quiet satisfaction settling over her. She could almost picture them inside, scrambling to make sense of it all, but she wasn't going to be there for the fallout. For the first time, she felt like she had control over something. Over them. The chaos was theirs to handle now, and she was free of it. The doorbell rang early the next morning, a harsh jolt to Olivia's quiet apartment. She had barely gotten any sleep, her mind still spinning from the fallout of last night's dinner, but there it was again. Another confrontation, this time at her doorstep. She opened the door to find her parents standing in front of her, looking both furious and desperate. Her father was holding the receipt for the dinner, his jaw clenched, his eyes narrow with frustration. Her mother stood beside him, looking as if she were trying, but failing, to hide her irritation. "You need to fix this," her father barked, before Olivia could even say hello. "This is insane. You can't just cut us off like this. You embarrassed us in front of everyone." Her mother gave a tense smile, though her eyes were hard. "We don't understand, Olivia. After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us? You couldn't just help out like you always have?" Olivia stood silently, letting them talk. She wasn't going to let them manipulate her again, not this time. She crossed her arms and stared at them, letting the silence hang in the air. "I don't owe you anything anymore," Olivia finally said, her voice calm but firm. "You've used me for years, and I'm done." Her father stepped forward, his face red with anger. "You can't just turn your back on us like this, Olivia. You don't even realize what you're doing. We've always been there for you." Olivia shook her head slowly. "No, you've been there for what I could give you, not for me. You've never cared about me as a person, only what I can do for you." Her mother shifted uncomfortably, but still tried to hold her ground. "You can't do this, Olivia. You can't just stop helping your family. It's what families do." "Not when one person is always giving and the other is always taking," Olivia replied quietly. "You took from me until there was nothing left." Her father's eyes narrowed in frustration. "You've always had the money. Why can't you just be a good daughter and help out like you always have?" Olivia let out a bitter laugh. "Because I'm not just your bank account. I'm not just the person you go to when you need something." Her mother's eyes softened, but only for a moment. "You're making a mistake, Olivia. You'll see that." Olivia wasn't moved by her mother's words. "No, I'm not. You just don't like it when the money stops flowing. You've been using me for years, and I'm done." The room was thick with tension as Olivia let the words settle between them. Her father opened his mouth as if to argue further, but Olivia cut him off. "I'm done talking. You can't keep manipulating me," she said, her voice unwavering. "If you want to know why I've stopped, think about everything you've put me through, and then think about whether you're still willing to act like this is my fault." Her parents stared at her, their faces filled with a mixture of anger, confusion, and for a fleeting moment, understanding. But just as quickly, that understanding was replaced with resentment. Her father's fist clenched, and before Olivia could react, he stormed toward the door. "You'll regret this," he spat, his voice thick with fury. "This isn't over." He stormed out of the apartment, but not before Olivia heard a loud crash from the parking lot. Her stomach dropped as she stepped toward the window. Her father was standing by her car, a large rock in his hand. Without a second thought, he raised it and slammed it down onto the windshield. The glass shattered with a sickening crack, the pieces falling to the ground in a jagged pattern. Olivia's breath caught in her throat as she stood there, stunned. She didn't even move as she watched him walk away, his figure growing smaller in the distance. The world seemed to move in slow motion. She pulled out her phone, opened the security footage app, and recorded the entire incident. The image of her father, still angry and shaken, was burned into her mind. But this time, Olivia didn't feel the rush of anger. She felt detached, calm, in control. When her father was gone, she went inside, took a deep breath, and filed a police report. It wasn't about getting back at him. It was about holding him accountable for his actions. For the first time, she wasn't afraid to stand up for herself, and she wasn't going to let them get away with it. As she completed the report, a small wave of relief washed over her. She had made the choice to let go. The past few years had been filled with nothing but manipulation and guilt, but now she was finally starting to let go of the weight they had placed on her shoulders. Her phone buzzed again, but this time, she ignored it. The fallout had begun, and she wasn't about to let it pull her back in. Olivia stood in the middle of her new apartment, feeling the weight of the boxes she'd packed and the finality of her decision. She had done it. She had moved, completely uprooted herself from the life she had known, and now, standing in the calm of her new place, she felt something she hadn't in a long time: peace. The city was quieter, the air less heavy, and for the first time in a long time, Olivia didn't feel like she was drowning. She could breathe. A part of her had thought she'd regret it, walking away from everything, her family, the endless requests for help, the constant manipulation. But now, as she unpacked her things, setting up a space that was hers and hers alone, she realized that she'd been holding onto a life that wasn't really her own. Her phone buzzed, and for a brief moment, she felt her stomach tighten. She knew what it was. Her mother, her father, they hadn't stopped trying to reach her. The missed calls, the desperate texts, and now an email from her father. Olivia, I've been thinking about everything. I know I failed you in so many ways, but I hope you can understand. I've been a fool. You're my daughter, and I love you. I'm sorry. Olivia read the message several times, her fingers hovering over the screen. She was tempted to respond, but something held her back. Her father had always been quick with apologies, but they were always followed by the same pattern: the guilt trips, the demands. He knew exactly how to make her feel responsible, and now he was using the same tactics again. She stared at the email, considering her options, but then she remembered everything she had endured: the years of giving, the silence when she needed them, the emotional manipulation. Instead of replying, Olivia set the phone down and moved on to unpacking her books, her photos. The simple task gave her a sense of control over the space, over her life. She wasn't ready to respond to the apology. She wasn't sure if she would ever be. Later that afternoon, her cousin Ashley arrived, her voice a welcome sound in the otherwise quiet apartment. She had driven to the city to check on Olivia, offering her support. "Hey," Ashley said warmly as she stepped inside, looking around with interest. "I'm so proud of you, Liv. I can't believe you finally did it." Olivia smiled, feeling a lightness she hadn't felt in years. "I'm still adjusting, but yeah, I think I'm where I'm supposed to be." Ashley nodded, taking a seat on the couch. "You're doing the right thing. They were using you, Liv, and you're free now. It's a new chapter. You've finally taken your life back." For the first time, Olivia allowed herself to truly hear the words. She had spent so long feeling like she was the one who was wrong for wanting to stand up for herself, for setting boundaries. But Ashley was right. This was her life, and she deserved to live it on her own terms. Olivia sat down beside her cousin, a quiet smile playing on her lips. "It feels strange, but I think it's going to be good for me. I've spent so much time putting their needs before mine. It's time to focus on me." "You deserve it," Ashley said with conviction. "You've been carrying that weight for too long, and now you can just breathe." Olivia nodded, feeling a weight lift off her shoulders. It was a small step, but it was enough. She knew there was still more ahead. Her family wouldn't give up easily, and the road to healing was still long. But for the first time, Olivia felt like she was walking it with her head held high. "I'm not going back," Olivia said, more to herself than to Ashley. "I can't. Not until they show me they've really changed. And even then, I don't know if I'll be able to trust them." Ashley reached out, giving her a reassuring squeeze. "And you don't have to. Trust is earned, Liv. Don't let them rush you. You've been patient enough for a lifetime." Olivia smiled, feeling the warmth of her cousin's support. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she had a future that didn't revolve around her family's needs and expectations. She was free to live for herself. "I think I'm finally starting to understand what that feels like," she said softly. As the evening settled in, Olivia looked around the apartment, taking in the new space that was hers, truly hers. No more guilt. No more manipulation. For the first time in a long time, Olivia felt hope. Real, untainted hope. Olivia had known it wouldn't be easy to break free. Her family wasn't just going to let go of her so easily. They'd spent years relying on her, and she had no doubt they would do whatever it took to try to manipulate her back into their lives. The first few weeks in her new city were quiet. A strange peace settling over her, she found a cozy apartment near her work, and every morning felt like a small victory. No more guilt trips, no more demands. Just the hum of her own life, on her own terms. But then the messages started. It began with texts from her mother, casual at first, asking how she was doing, trying to sound like things were normal. The subtle guilt was always there, though. The kind of messaging that made Olivia feel like she was the one in the wrong, as though walking away from the constant manipulation was an act of selfishness. "We miss you, Olivia. Things just aren't the same without you. Your father is worried about you. We need you." The texts became more frequent, more insistent. Eventually, they turned into calls. The moment Olivia saw her mother's name on the screen, she sighed deeply, but never answered. She had heard it all before. Then came the email from her Aunt Linda. "Olivia, we need to talk. Your mother is falling apart. You can't just abandon us like this. It's time to be a family again." Olivia stared at the email, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. Part of her wanted to fire back, to tell her aunt exactly how manipulative her family had been, how they treated her like nothing more than a paycheck, but she knew it wasn't worth the effort. It would only drag her back into the same toxic cycle. She deleted the message without replying. Days later, her Uncle Jim reached out. Unlike the others, his tone wasn't accusatory or manipulative. Instead, he offered a neutral perspective. He spoke about how her parents were trying to change, how her brother had finally taken a job for the first time in years, and how they were all trying to find their way without her financial support. It was a subtle shift, a slight glimpse into something different, but Olivia wasn't fooled. She knew change took time. Real change didn't happen because people said the right things. It happened when actions aligned with words, when trust was rebuilt over time, something her family had never been willing to do before. "I think they're starting to see where they went wrong," Jim wrote. "But it's going to take some time. You have every right to feel hurt, but maybe, just maybe, they'll get there." Olivia let his words sink in, but she didn't immediately respond. For the first time in years, she didn't feel the urge to fix everything, to make things right on their behalf. She thought about it for a while before putting her phone down. Her family wasn't ready to change. They were simply scrambling to get back the safety net they'd lost. But change, real change, would have to come from them. Olivia couldn't be the one to save them again. She spent the evening reflecting on everything that had happened. She had made the right choice. Her life in this new city was her own. And for the first time in a long time, she felt free. Free to live without the constant demands, the guilt, and the manipulation that had defined her family relationships for far too long. As she sat by the window watching the city lights twinkle below, Olivia felt a quiet sense of satisfaction. Her family had always made her feel like she was the one with the problem, like she was the one who wasn't enough. But now she realized they were the ones who had the problem. She had stopped enabling their behavior, and that was the first step toward healing, for both her and them. If they wanted her back in their lives, they'd have to prove it with more than just words. Actions spoke louder, and Olivia was no longer willing to forgive them without seeing that change. In time, perhaps, but not now. For now, she was focused on herself. She had finally found peace, and that was more than enough.